Hey everybody, welcome to another episode of the LitRPG Podcast. I'm Ramon Mejia. I'm here to bring you the latest LitRPG news, reviews, and author interviews, of course, on episode number 48 of the podcast. This week, I'll be reviewing 8 new LitRPG titles, beginning with This Is Our Land, Emerilia, Book 5. Moving on to The New World, Middle Kingdom, Book 1. After that, The Lost Archive, a LitRPG adventure in the Veilwalkers series. Then after that, Eyrth Tactics Advanced, Volume 1. And of course, after that, it'll be Wolf Mountain, a LitRPG novel, Adventure Online, Book 1. Some long titles here. Afterwards, it'll be Eyrth Online, and it'll be Eyrth spelled with E-Y-R-T-H. Episode 2, The Los Dos, Memoirs of Lawrence Wrath, second playlist. Then, it'll be Zero God, a LitRPG tale, Awakening, in Digital Realm series. And then last but certainly not least, it'll be Hell to Pay, the second book in the Ascend Online series. But of course, we'll begin our show though with LitRPG news. And our first story in LitRPG news is going to come from Magic Dome Books, the nice folks who translate a lot of the Russian LitRPG into English. This week they announced that the Way of the Shaman series is going to be released in South Korea, the motherland of LitRPG. May 11th is the first book release date, so congratulations to you folks over there who've been working hard translating all those titles from Vasily Mahenko and of course everybody else in Russia for us in the United States and English speakers, and now you're giving back to the LitRPG motherland, so thank you folks and hope everything goes well. Additionally, for Magic Dome Books, they're going to have a new LitRPG series coming out called The First Player on May the 9th on Amazon. But in the meantime, to whet your appetites, they've released the first 4 chapters for free out on their webpage at magicdomebooks.com. We'll have a link in the show notes for you. It's written by Andrew Novak, and it's titled again, The First Player, which is apparently a sci-fi fantasy LitRPG mix. But go read the first 4 chapters so you can see if it's going to be for you. Okay, additionally, R.J. Castellan, author of the Fjorgian series, the author is very nice to send me the pronunciations of that, has released the book cover art for their second book in their series. It'll be entitled The Deep Below. And it's a very, very it's very interesting. I want to say pretty because of their color scheme, but it's also a little disturbing, which is very much in line with some of the themes in the story. But I look forward to reading it. And the author posted on Facebook that the novel should be ready about mid-summer if you're looking forward to it. And in case you missed it, the last episode of the LitRPG Podcast featured the first ever LitRPG Author Showdown featuring Vasily Mahenko and Alarong Kong in a versus fun game situation. It was actually a really enjoyable time. The idea was thought of by Vasily Mahenko, and we brainstormed a bunch of story ideas and game ideas, and we broadcasted it live to the internet. It was just at really early in the morning, in the middle of the week. So only a couple people, like 3 or 4, actually watched it live, and a bunch of people, of course, watched it with the regular podcast episodes and of course on Facebook or whatever. But it was a really fun time. Now, as promised, we have tallied up the votes and we will announce a winner right now. Round 1 of that particular event went to Alarong Kong. Round 2, the voters and watchers listened and they voted and they said that the winner was round 2 was Vasily Mahenko. And round 3, which would be the tiebreaker, went to Vasily Mahenko, making Vasily Mahenko the winner of the first ever LitRPG Author Showdown, which makes Vasily our Author of the Week. So congratulations to you, sir, for being the Author of the Week. And in new LitRPG audiobooks that have come out this week, we have Memoirs, Continue Online, Book 1, written by a friend of the show. I've interviewed him a couple times. Always a big fan of his LitRPG works. They recommend for me. The audiobook narrator does a pretty good job. But again, it's one of those things that narrators either work for you or they don't. So I always encourage you to go check out a sample before you go purchase it. We'll have the link in the show notes for it if you want to go check it out. Additionally, Alarong Kong has re-released the audiobooks for his series, the Chaos Seed series, with the first book already being ready. It's going to be narrated this time around by Nick Podehl, very famous narrator. So you can go check that out. And again, we'll have a link in the show notes for all those audiobooks. And let's see, out now. These are stories that have come out recently. Haven't had a chance to review them this week, but I'll be reviewing them next week on the show, including Gink, a LitRPG adventure, Crucible Shard Book 4, and Thousand Tales, Learning to Fly. Now, this is a standalone novel in the Thousand Tales series, but it is going to be out by the time most of you are watching this, which is on May the 5th. Now, in upcoming LitRPG, I'm just going to read a bunch of titles out to you and give you some dates when they're going to be released. We have The First Player out on May the 9th. We have War of the Greenwood out on May the 12th. Stuck in an RPG out on the 27th of May. The Eternal Dragonborn is out on the 31st of May. Also on the 31st of May, we have a new addition to the upcoming LitRPG list. Eden's Gate Book 2, The Sparrow. And then The Hero of There will be out on June the 1st. And then Conquest, LitRPG story, is also going to be out on June the 1st. And apparently there's also going to be an audiobook edition to that. And then Fantasy Online, Hyperborea is out on June the 2nd. Also on June the 2nd is Stay on the Wing, which is the second book in the Dark Herbalist series. Stone Raiders Return is going to be Emerilia Book 6 out on June the 6th. Coincidence? I think not. And that's it for June. Everything else is coming out in July. But a few more titles in July, but you can look at them on our regular list on the Facebook page or on our website at geekbystpodcast.com or litrpgpodcast.com. Same place. Okay, on to new releases and reviews. And in new releases and reviews, we're going to begin with our review of This Is Our Land, Emerilia Book 5, written by Michael Chatfield. Always a favorite of mine. I will read the author's description. The Eyrth were nearly wiped out for tampering with technology born of the Jugal portals. The demons of Devil Crater were almost turned to a footnote in history for rebelling against the Dark God. The Beastkin were seen as a threat with their natural high affinities. Now, all of these races have started to come back. The first stage in Bob's plan to save Emerilia. With the Stone Raiders' help, the Eyrth have recovered their cities, stepping down the path to reviving their society. Now the demons and Beastkin of Devil's Crater ask the Stone Raiders to once again stand with an exiled race. This is their land, and they will fight the Pantheon and Jugal to the bitter end in order to defend it. Okay, the story is 376 pages, $4.99. It is available on Kindle Unlimited. This is always an easy review for me. These stories are great, and the pace at which the author puts these out, which is essentially once a month, is absolutely mind-blowing. At this point, I'm, even without like a job anymore, I'm writing about 3,000 words a day, and Michael Chatfield must be like double or tripling that number to get these books out in this kind of record time, so I'm always giving him props for that. But as far as my review is, I enjoyed the story. It was really good. Really action-filled for the first half of the story. Like, the first half of it is essentially a huge, massive battle scene for the Battle of Demon's Crater. Lots of explosions, magic, and enough killing of bad dudes to satisfy just about everybody. Now, the last half of the story is more laid back, not action-oriented. It's about creation of alliances between the new races, crafting, kingdom building, city building, that kind of stuff, economic developments, and some hints and some upcoming storylines. All really good stuff. Enjoyed every minute of it. Read it in one sitting. Score is 8 out of 10. Okay, on to our next story. A New World, Middle Kingdom, Book 1, written by Mike Han. This is the author's description of the story. June woke up, not knowing what happening to him. All he found out was that he had signed up for a game he couldn't remember. This began the adventure of him discovering himself and the martial powers path that he would choose. That's verbatim, folks, which is an indicator of some of the issues I had. It is 173 pages, $2.99, and it is available on Kindle Unlimited. Again, this is my summary. Set in some unspecified game world, the main character doesn't remember anything except that he signed up to play a full immersion game for the next year. Now, the first 30% of the story is mostly martial arts training. This entire story is basically a LitRPG version. I think it's called Wushu story, which is just martial arts training, fighting, combat, training, more combat kind of stuff. It's very combat oriented. But the first 30% of it is just training. And it's a skill and ability game mechanic system. So there aren't levels or stats as far as, being out obviously stated, but there are skills and abilities that are advanced within the storyline. So it is LitRPG. And again, while there is a lot of action in the story, it doesn't feel super visceral. This is one of the cases that the author was a little too technical in their explanations of combat action moves and the martial arts stuff, which is really unfortunate because it has the potential of being like a really good action story. It's just that a lot of the fights in the training just suffer from being overly technical and accurate and overly descriptive in that it gets bogged down in those technicalities. So it loses some of the visceral nature of combat. Additionally, there are a lot of spelling, grammar, tense errors throughout the story, and that's going to bother a lot of people. At least 1 to 2 in every single paragraph. So that's going to be an issue. And in general, I'll ignore some small errors here and there, but this many just I have to at least let you know about it if you're going to purchase it. Overall, the story just for me was just kind of meh. It was okay. It wasn't bad. It just wasn't amazing either. So it just kind of fell in the middle. It was kind of a mess story for me. Score is a 5 out of 10. Okay, on to our next story, Lost Archive, a LitRPG adventure, Veilwalkers Book 1, written by Isaac Winter. Okay, this is, I'm going to read my own summary. It is 262 pages. It is $2.99. It is available on Kindle Unlimited. The main character, Winston, is a translator of some kind. It's never really specified in the story what he translates, but he's familiar with a variety of languages, translating from one to the other in the real world, and he's transported to a new world ruled by video game RPG mechanics, and he becomes Kale, a dark elf rogue who can read the fundamental code of the world, ruins. He's on a quest to find the author, that's titled The Author, the creator of the world, to try to get back to Earth. There you go. Honestly, this feels like it's unfinished in a lot of ways. Like it could have gone through a couple revisions and cut out some of the extra bits and pieces of it. And it has a lot of potential overall. And unfortunately, this is just an indicator of what issues are within the story for myself. You can skip the entire first 10% of this entire novel. It's summarized in the third chapter, which is just at that 10% mark. And so everything you read in the first 10% feels like a waste of time because that third chapter summarizes the entire section in like a paragraph. And that kind of gives you an indicator that there could have been some more tightening of the storyline structurally, because a lot of it feels like filler within the storyline. I'll get to that in a second. There are some really good jewels in this story. Like there are some hints of like greatness in it. It's just that potential is never really realized throughout the story. I kept waiting for it to get like, oh, this is good, it must get better, and it never really got to that point. Fundamentally, the game mechanics are really solid. I liked the openness of the world. I really like I'm always a big fan of skill mechanics, like valuing reading, education, the fundamental code, the rune system in the story is kind of cool and neat. I like those parts of it. Those are neat. They're well done. They're detailed. Nothing to complain about there. I especially like the fact that there's a whole class devoted to knowledge and learning, the archivist, which is kind of cool. However, again, a lot of the story feels like it's unnecessary, like it's filler, like that first 10% could have been cut out and edited out because it wasn't needed at all. And a lot of that happens in the story. The main character doesn't really struggle through anything in the story. Things happen to him and he reacts and he survives, and other characters save him, or just, he skin goes by the skin of his teeth, but it doesn't ever really like struggle. There are no like super bad things necessarily that happen to him as far as like remaining permanent fixtures in his life. And a lot of the story plot mechanics are just kind of handed to him. Like in one instance, he's transported to another sub-realm within this game world, and there's like, oh, you are the saved one, here's a quest, and he's gone again. And there are a lot of things like that, just very like, very convenient and like fillery. Like with a tighter story editing, it could have been like a really, really good book, and it just never really met that potential that I saw in it, which is kind of brings it down for me. So overall, it was fine. It's not like a bad story or anything like that. It just never hit good for me. So it gets a score out of a 6 out of 10. Okay, on to Earth Tactics Advanced, Volume 1, written by Scotty Hooch. Okay, I will read you the author's description. An ordinary day in the life of Scotty Keene suddenly turns tactical as the law of physics are rewritten to force the world to adhere to an apocalyptic change in the very nature of existence. Those who manage to survive the first day of the new world must survive in the wake of a new reality. Life lived as a turn-based tactical role-playing game. Feel the horror and revel in the humor as battles take place one turn at a time. Can one man survive a world gone tactical? Will he even understand the need for background music and strange announcer voices? It's your turn to find out. This is 298 pages, $3.99. It is not available in Kindle Unlimited. This is always the thing with Scotty's stories. He puts them on the internet sometimes for free. So he cannot put them on Kindle Unlimited program. And again, this is a great LitRPG story from a good, solid LitRPG writer. Just about everything Scott has written is, I'm a fan of, and this is no different. This time it's a turn-based RPG story set on an apocalyptic Earth. Now, before I read this originally on the internet for free when it was still being, written, I would have never thought it impossible to write a turn-based game mechanics into the story. It's always just like weird because it's you do something, you wait for the other guy to do this thing, it comes back to you, you do your thing, and half of the story is like waiting. And I always thought that I would have never imagined that it was possible to make that entertaining and to make it an interesting way of telling a story in a LitRPG situation. But Scotty does it somehow, and he makes it entertaining as all heck. In the story, there's action, there's adventure, there's an apocalyptic theme of searching for food and allies matched up with turn-based RPG mechanics, and it all meshes very well together, for the most part. Like any story, there are always going to be these little things. But again, I love this reading every minute of the story. It gets an easy score for me, 8 out of 10. Okay, on to our next story, Wolf Mountain, a LitRPG novel, Adventure Online Book 1, written by Isaac Stone and Timothy Mayer. Okay, the author describes this as Indiana Jones meets Ready Player One. Yeah. This is the author's description of the story. Vince is a down and out millennial with an advanced degree in archaeology and ends an endless parade of dead-end jobs. You know what? I'm going to skip the author's description. Mine's a lot simpler. This is 352 pages, $2.99. It is available on Kindle Unlimited. Vince, the main character, gets chosen to be a beta tester for the next full immersion the next great full immersion game, I should say. And he's sent into the 1920s where he's supposed to find a long lost treasure while dodging gangsters and bootleggers. That's a much shorter version than the author put. Well, look, that's the summary of the story. Unfortunately, even though the author describes it as Indiana Jones meets Ready Player One, it's not. This is not even really a LitRPG. It's supposed to be set in a virtual reality game, which it says that it is, and it reminds you on a fairly regular basis that I'm in a LitRPG, I'm in a virtual reality game, and in the extent that that's the game setting, I can buy that as a virtual reality game, as a game set in a 1920s world. That's fine. But it is not LitRPG, and I'll tell you why in a second. It really does feel more like either a time travel story or at best like a choose your own adventure novel. There are character sheets, but they have no descriptors on there, no numbers, no explanations of stats. There's an adventure log that gives you most of your game information and the storyline information, but even that is dispensed with literally midway through the story. And so even those tiny bits of game mechanic stuff disappear in the story. And there's supply caches where the main character gets new equipment and supplies. But that's not really an RPG mechanic as much as just these are things for the player to use in the story. And those could be easily explained away by just things that they find when they're searching. And again, all those game mechanics lack details, and they're not really important to the story as game mechanics, which is kind of sad to me, because the fundamental idea of like a lit RPG story set in the 1920s as like either a detective story or some kind of adventure story seems kind of cool. It's just not executed well, and it kind of falls short of lit RPGness in a way. Again, I can appreciate the author's attempt at trying to tell a different kind of story. The 1920s setting, Prohibition era, is unique, and I give them credit for it. However, again, even with the inclusion of mobsters, bootleggers, the story just was never really interesting. Even while reading it, I kept waiting for the story to get better and better, or to feel like some kind of game or RPG mechanic and something, and it just never did. I was left waiting. So as an adventure story, maybe set in the 1920s, it would get a 5 out of 10. But as a LitRPG adventure story, I guess it's not really one, so it gets a 4 out of 10. So sorry, Wolf Mountain. Okay, on to our next story, Eyrth Online, Episode 2, The Los Dos, The Memoirs of Lawrence Wrath, second playlist, written by Gabriel Rathwag. He remembered to put his name on it this time. Okay, this one is 107 pages, $1. I mean, come on. And it's available in Kindle Unlimited, so it's a really good price point. Now, like the last story, the author has included a musical playlist that you can listen to, which is, I think this is really something that kind of increases its value, in my opinion, because it adds another layer of a stimuli to the story, and that each chapter begins with like a particular song, and if you kind of listen to it while you're reading it, or before or after, whatever the case is, but it does add an extra layer of like, oh, that's kind of cool. I think it's neat that the author created a story soundtrack for his novel. So there you go. And this time around, actually, I knew some of the songs before I saw them or listened to them. But they were the older songs. I guess I'm an old man, apparently. Like, I Think We're Alone Now and Let's Hear It for the Boy. Everything else in place was the first time me hearing it when I first listened to it. Now, in episode 1 of this series, our main character, Law, went through the setup process and chose the hardest challenge mode possible for his character. Sure, he gained the rocking Adonis body, but he also only gets 1 life on super hard murder mode in this full immersion virtual reality game. Okay, now just a quick heads up for people. There are numerous grammar, spelling, tense issues in the story. The tables are a little messed up in that they don't quite fit every format that they're put into. So it looks fine on like a larger tablet, but on your phone, it looks a little wonky. But none of that stops the story from being fun, which is all it really tries to be. There are enough explained game mechanics that it really simply qualifies as LitRPG. There's no question about that. And I should warn you that there is marijuana use within the story, which is, again, within context, that's just the author's style. And there's, fun things. I consider this a stoner lit RPG, and it's fun for that to me. What I really like about the story is just the author's willingness to experiment with the genre, like the music stuff, the fun characters, and just write a fun story. The author's not trying to make this epic fiction. It's just a dude goes on an adventure. He has a good time. It's like Cheech and Chong, a lit RPG, in a lot of ways. And heck, I mean, the author puts in street sharks into the story. He puts a different name to them, but they're sharks with legs and arms. And I'm like, hey, I know what those are. And it's all just for fun. It's not a super serious story, which is why he puts it like at $1, So it's totally worth the ride for me. However, I know the story is not going to appeal to everybody, which is why I mentioned those things. If you don't like stoner action adventure comedy movies, this may not be the story for you. But if you like that kind of stuff, this may be. It's just, like I said, it's a fun story, not being too serious, and it is what it is. For me, I enjoyed it, and I give it a 7 out of 10. Okay, on to our next story, Zero God, a lit RPG tale, Awakening. It is written by, the author's name is not on the cover page, but it is in the story somewhere. It's not listed there either, so never mind. But this is, the author happened to mention in an email to me. He said that this was just like a hobby story for him. He did originally written it for another contract as a contract work, but the original contract fell through, and so he just published it on his own. Okay, so putting that to the side, it is 78 pages. It is $2.99. It is not available on Kindle Unlimited. So, first major flaw, hugely overpriced. For less than 100 pages, you're paying $3. It's a big issue for me. I know it's a big issue for other people just because they feel that it's overvalued and overpriced. And that's one of the bigger things in the story. In addition to the price, the story is full of grammar, spelling, and tense errors, which, I'm pretty tolerant about in general. But here, there's at least one grammar, spelling, or tense error every other paragraph. So it's a little bit much, especially when you're charging $2.99 and it's not on Kindle Unlimited. Like I said, if it's priced a little more appropriately, people are a little more tolerant of, technical issues, especially if they feel like if they're getting it for free on Kindle Unlimited. But now putting to the side those kind of glaring writing flaws, the story is not bad. It's not really horrible. It reminds me of a simplified version of Sword Art Online in a lot of ways. Plot-wise, the main character wakes up not remembering anything and finds out he's trapped in a game. And if his play counter time reaches 0, he dies permanently. So there you go. The story doesn't really have a overarching cohesive plot within that first 7-8 pages. I mean, it's not very long. As much as a series of events that happen to the main character, Isaac, over the course of those 7-8 pages. He has, there's pet raising in the story, there's PKers, player killers, there's permadeath, there's combat training, a little bit of crafting, and then towards the end of it, there's also a larger plot line of like maybe getting free of the game eventually kind of thing going on. But I'm not going to spoil the details of that for you. Now, game mechanic wise, the story is skill based, so no levels. There are plenty of details about as far as like the skill mechanic and magic system of the world. However, there aren't a lot of solid numbers and details associated with damage or stats, or like damage ranges for weapons, what these skills do in combat as far as like what effects they have. There's a little bit of that, but it's not really detailed. It's a little bit vague. So if you're looking for like a hard, crunchy LitRPG, this is not it. Story-wise, again, it's decent. It's not horrible. It's just not amazing either, but there is a lot of potential there. I really like the openness of the magic and the skill system in the story. They have really good storytelling potential in there that they don't box a character into a particular class skill system. And allows for a lot of variety, especially like when you can start combining pets and their abilities in the storyline. So there's a lot of potential within the story. Now, unfortunately, because of the price, and I can't ignore that, if it wasn't for that, I would really be able to recommend this. But at $3.09 for only 78 pages, it's really just too much price for too little story. So it gets a score of 6 out of 10 for me. Okay, on to our last but not least story, Hell to Pay, Ascend Online Book 2 by Luke Chimilenko, friend of the podcast. Okay, it is 344 pages. It is $6. It is available on Kindle Unlimited. I will read you the author's description of the story. Lazarus Kane is a member of the Grim Shadows, one of the Thieves Guild in the city of Iberia. Unfortunately, Lazarus is having a bad day, waking up in a torture chamber, suffering from amnesia, and he'd pretty much be screwed if not for the mysterious magical sigil burned into his chest. Sometimes a really bad day should be shared with others, especially your professional torturers. Lazarus will need to use all of his cunning and skill to work with his comrades, uncovering schemes within schemes, discovering that the Grim Shadows are not the only Thieves Guild in the city mired in conflict. What's more, the leaders of the other guilds, the Thief Lords, don't respond well to treachery. Okay, the story is 344 pages. It is $6, a little pricey. It is available on Kindle Unlimited. Now, again, the story is essentially about 2 cents a page. A little bit less, actually. So price-wise, it's not bad, to be honest. This story is not about the main characters from Ascend Online Book 1. And a lot of people are a little annoyed that that's not the story they're getting. Because it says in the title, Ascend Online Book 2. And it should kind of be a novel in the Ascend Online universe. Because it's about an entirely different set of characters. The story focuses on Lazarus Kane, a level 12 brawler, who's a member of the Thieves Guild. And again, he wakes up in a cell. He can't remember the last 24 hours. and he has to figure some stuff out and try to stop this city he's in from collapsing from internal conflicts. And it's a really good action-oriented story. Again, it's a standalone novel, lots of action, lots of adventure, a little bit of mystery as well, as far as like the main character trying to figure out what exactly happened in that missing 24-hour period. And the main character is not your straight, paladin righteous hero. He's an anti-hero. He's chosen the unlawful path of the criminal within this game system world. So he's beaten people up, he's robbed and killed people as far as like the game mechanic stuff goes. And so he's not exactly your average hero, but he has a code of his own, of course, and he sticks to it in defending the people he considers friends. And there's a lot of fun story telling opportunity in the story, and the author fulfills it all, in my opinion. The game mechanics are solid in the story, but they aren't as detailed as they are in Ascend Online 1. Again, this is more of an action-oriented story. So in some ways, the author does assume that you've already been briefed on the game mechanics of the world of Ascend Online from book 1, but he does also do a little bit of them, just not as much as you would expect from a first book or a spin-off book necessarily. But again, this was a very interesting story. I read it in about 2 sittings, so it really did keep me engaged. Now, I had a chance to message the author of Ascend Online, Luke Chmelenko, and he says that he originally had Lazarus as a side character for the main storyline, but he felt that the character and his friends were too flat and required too much backstory explanation, so he essentially turned the backstory he had for the character into a full-blown novel, and this is it. But he says, don't worry that the 2 storylines between, Hell to Pay and the main Ascend Online story will be mixing in the next book in this series, which is going to be, the regular main storyline series, and the next book called The Legacy of the Fallen. So there you go, folks. For me, very enjoyable book. Good recommend. It gets a score of 7 out of 10. That's it. Done, finito, finished, folks. 8 novels, 8 stories, all reviewed for you folks at home. Thank you very much for listening and watching to the show, folks. You have all the places you can follow the show on Facebook, Twitter, YouTube, Patreon, of course. And of course, there are plenty of ways to support the podcast. If you enjoyed our podcast, this series, this thing that I do and I love, you can find out all the ways to support us at litrpgpodcast.com/support. Go check it out. I appreciate all the things that you guys do, of course. But again, thanks for hanging out with me today. And until we can hang out again, I can talk more to you about this thing that I love, LitRPG. Remember to go read some LitRPG, that is. Goodbye, everybody.